Good. Okay. This is the first of two presentations in a row. This one is more from the analyst point of view. This is the one presentation we're going to be giving where we're going to talk about the Analyst Workbench, which is an eclipsed UI that uses the AMF framework behind it. And this is Zach's got a presentation together here about how he applied evidence-based assurance techniques within the Analyst Workbench to do his work. There's two parts to the presentation. The first part is going to go over the UI a bit, familiar with parts of it. And then the second part is going to talk about evidence-based assurance and how Zach uses the tool to track evidence-based assurance. Okay.
Hi, I'm Zach Seamon. I'm an analyst on the SMAT team, and we are the official guinea pigs for the AMF. And when I say that, it makes it sound painful, but it's really a useful tool that's helped us out a lot, and try to show you some of that. So if you were in the presentation earlier, saw a new presentation, you probably saw this graphic. This is our MES graphic showing kind of a standard approach of when we try to hook up a bunch of different user interfaces to a bunch of different sources of data. It gets complicated really quickly. We have a lot of different teams and a lot of different spreadsheets and techniques to get their data around, and it becomes a mess and it's inefficient. And I think we've all been in the place where you spend start an analysis on a spreadsheet or an app to help us out, and 5 hours later we're still on the first paragraph of our FTD we're analyzing, and we didn't really get much actual analysis work done. So what we do is we had a business layer, which, as I said, they talked a lot about, and I kind of use an analogy in my head with a USB device. So we have, my phone's plug and my iPad's plug and my computer's plug are all different shapes, and but the other side of all those cords is a USB plug, and that lets me talk to my computer with my phone. It lets me go to a power socket, talk to my car, and it's a common interface that makes it really simple to go from all my different user interfaces to all my different data sources. And that's kind of what this is in a nutshell. Basically, if I have an existing project that has 5 different user interfaces and I'm using AWB and Excel sheets and Word files, and I'm looking at a couple different databases, and I get a new tool, it should be really easy to quickly plug it into the business layer and then talk to everything else. So that's the short version of that. This is just showing some of the currently supported user interfaces and data sources. We have the AWB, obviously, Microsoft Word, Microsoft Excel, PowerPoint, the data layers, SQL Server, Doors, Orbit, Excel, Word, that kind of stuff. So moving on from that, I'll talk a little about the Analyst Workbench, which is, as Dom was saying, it's an Eclipse-based tool that is a user interface customized for the AMF. Let's see, we'll highlight some areas of the tool. The first window here is the analysis, and it works a lot like a folder structure in Microsoft Word or ECM. It's looking at the database in a kind of tiered structure where the top level things have children under them. You see and this is, it's hard to read, I know, but we have expanded here. We have a design documentation folder that contains a standards folder that contains IBV 9-1 and NASA 7009 standard, which is expanded into all of its subsections. And I'll get a little more into that later. I have specific slides on each of these sections. The next window to the right is the traceability graph, which is a real flashy part of the software. It lets us look at relationships between artifacts and assessments in the tool. So I can bring up any artifact on the left on the tool, and I can start seeing other things that are connected to it, children or parents, and you can break it down into trees. So for example, if I throw a level 4 requirement over on the right, I can right click it and show children and see maybe 5 or 6 L5 requirements that are traced as children of that. And it's a really powerful feature that I'll get into a little more later. Then we have artifact property view, Real quickly, I'll go over here artifact assessment a lot. An artifact is anything from the NASA project. So it's things like requirements and FDDs, source code, anything that we're getting that we're supposed to analyze. Whereas an assessment is our work against those artifacts. So things like design analysis, or storing evidence, making claims, that kind of stuff would all fall into the assessment category. So this is just more detailed information on anything, any artifact you click on in either the palette or on the graph. Get the large text box there, that's where your requirement text, or your paragraph from an FAQ, or your source code would show up. And then underneath that, we have, it's hard to see on this slide, we'll talk about that later. And then similarly, the assessment property view is kind of the same thing for assessments. We have a description field, we have basic information, what it is, who made it, when they made it, when it was modified, and stuff like that. So next, a little about views and preferences, which are more specific to A/V&V, but first of all, views. Views are each individual window, like the traceability graph or a palette. Each individual window in the tool is called a view. And the collection of views configured in whatever fashion you choose is a perspective. So here you see it a little different from the last slide. I actually have two of my views minimized. Oh, not what I expected to happen. Two of my views minimized off the left there. And I'm just looking at the traceability graph and the assessment property view. If you look up on the top right, there's a bar that has a couple different names. They're hard to read. Dual screen mode, search perspective, and then the NASA IV&V perspective. And this is my actual screenshot from my actual tool at my desk. And the NASA IV&V is the default one. It'll pop up for everyone to get it. And the other two are ones that I've made for specific activities that I do. The dual screen one is I actually have pulled some of the stuff over to my second monitor. It gives me a lot bigger graph view if I'm doing a big requirement breakdown or something like that. I can see better. In the search one, I just have things moved around and resized I think I was digging for some specific artifacts and I wanted to have this list bigger and stuff like that. So if we go into the options here, we have options to save perspectives and show views. You can minimize or close and move around all these individual pieces however you want, and then save them as a perspective and go back up to that top bar and reset it back to one of your original save perspectives and stuff like that. So it's really flexible and you can really tailor your the tool to whatever analysis you're doing or whatever your preferences are. So that's that bar I was talking about. And then those are the minimized views off to the side. And here's one of those options zoomed in a little bit. It's all the views in the NASA IV&V folder, all the views that are custom made by people here at IV&V for this tool. And there's actually a new one out called Artifact Context View. This came out a couple of days ago after we turned these slides. It has some really cool features. It can show children and parents really well, and it has a kind of three-tiered thing where you focus on a specific artifact. And stay tuned for more.
For those people familiar with the smart navigation interfaces, it's similar to that.
Right. It's similar to the smart UI. It's designed to be kind of a bridge between A/V&V and smart for people that prefer that type of analysis. So I'm going to go ahead and do a little bit of a highlight here on each of the parts to show you a little more. This is the analysis palette zoomed in. We have an analysis, artifacts, and perspectives. Analysis contains all of our assessments, which is our work. Artifacts and projects, artifacts and participants are just anyone assigned to the project, past or present, that may have done work. I'll expand the artifacts here. See a similar thing. We have a document broken down here, and the little gray bar there is highlighting a specific section of the standard. Click here. If I right-click on there, it gives me a list of options. I can create an assessment on that paragraph. So maybe I wanted to evaluate a specific section of an FTD and write some assessment notes on that. I can show it on the traceability graph, which will shoot it over the graph. I can add it to an existing graph, which won't erase all the work I had on the graph. I can add the artifact to a current assessment that already exists. I can create a trace between two artifacts. If I have an orphan that I found the parent for, I can go ahead and make that trace right in the tool. Comparing selected elements will bring up multiple windows. I can highlight as many artifacts as I want. It'll pop up detailed information for those artifacts. And then some search capabilities and some admin functionality. And then one other thing I wanted to highlight here was the add to favorites option. We actually have, you can see at the top of the list the favorites folder. You can, if you're doing specific work and then save you from digging down all the levels, it's kind of hard to find or stuff's all over the place, you can add a couple things to your favorites folder for your current task, and it simplifies navigation quite a bit. Okay, so the traceability graph view we showed a little bit earlier. So here I just have, if I started on the screen we're just at, I right click add traceability graph, I would get this bubble here. The yellow bubble is actually my artifact that I sent over, and the green one is an assessment written against that artifact. And I can right click on this and I get a different list of options. I have outgoing links will show children of the selected element. Incoming links will show parents. I can select parent or children nodes. Sometimes you have a mess of lots of stuff on the screen, and you can use that to help you navigate. I can reset the view back to where I started, remove this specific piece, create traces, and show more about the layouts of views later. I can actually save views and come back to them later. I can we actually tag in our assessments sometimes a name of a view that we use for analysis. So maybe I have a requirement breakdown that I saved, and then if someone else on my team is looking at my work, they can go back and see exactly what I was looking at. So here, here is if I click on add outgoing links, it'll send all the children up to the top there. And if I go to the layout, I can do an automatic layout functionality, which gives me this and organizes everything for me. So here we have a top of artifact with an assessment, and then all of its children split on the screen, and all the little numbers on the bubbles indicate that there's additional children to there. So I could go another level deeper and show all the children, each one of the other artifacts. Okay, the artifact property view was anytime I click on an artifact in either of the previous two screens, I can look at detailed information for that artifact in this view. So we have the text box there is where you're going to get your actual requirement text or paragraph text or code, and then all the information below is your standard database information that's stored in the database. We have name, number, description, and that kind of stuff. And the two things I want to highlight here, though, the version state and the historic state. The version state is how we track change impact. It changes if I have a June version of requirements drop, and I get a July version, we actually have a change impact. It'll go in, and that state gets changed. It can be new, deleted, modified, or unchanged, and we can actually track a lot of metrics that way. And really interesting part about that is if we have assessments attached to a requirement that gets changed to deleted or modified, it'll actually change the state of that assessment to be suspect. And then the analyst knows that has been modified, and they can go back and reevaluate that specific requirement or artifact to see if it changed their assessment. Maybe it's no longer an issue, maybe it is an issue now, but it wasn't, that kind of thing. And then the historic flag lets us mark things is old. So an example of the July drop coming in, all the June requirements will get flagged as historic, which means that they're not the most recent version. And we actually have options in the tool to hide all historic data, so you only see the most recent version of everything you're looking at. But there may be in certain cases where you need to look at old versions, so that's toggleable. And here I was just showing, I can highlight specific pieces. This is more for a code. If you're looking at source code, you can actually cut out a line or two and make a code block. Our code analysts on what happens is if they find, if they want to pull out 2 or 3 lines of code that implement a specific requirement or something like that, they can, that's what that function is for. So the assessment property view is similar. We have basic information for our assessment on the left. We have the title. Validation states kind of your results. It's what happened. Is it, was it good? Was there an issue generated? Was there a risk generated based on the assessment? The assessment state is the state of the assessment itself, started, in progress, finished, that kind of thing. And then we have who created it and when, and who's last modified it and when. On the right, we have, and this is where you store your actual analysis or evidence that you're trying to capture in a formal way. And the notes below it are kind of more informal things, some additional information that I wanted to mention that it doesn't really fit into my formal analysis. And this blank space here on the left actually is more fields being added by the project. It's kind of a customization option. For example, on our design assessments in SMAP, we have fields to answer the 3 questions and fields to answer things like, is it correct and complete and unambiguous and that kind of stuff. So that's kind of customizable additional information depending on what you're trying to, what type of assessment you're trying to do. And finally here, we have the search view, which is a way to text search through the database. At the top there, you can select between artifact and assessment, and then there's actually 2. I select what field on the database, number, name, description, stuff like that, and I can actually do an additional search on my first set of results with the second box. So, for example, here I searched for 7009 and got all the sections of that document. And maybe on the next line, I could have done search for name and search for scope, and I would have just got that 3rd entry. And I think Don's going to talk to this side.
This is kind of the transition between the 2 parts. It's a background, it's all the capabilities rather quickly, so if you absorbed a 1/3 of that, you'd be pretty good. But now we're going to actually go into a specific example of some evidence-based assurance that Zach's done. This is from the evidence-based assurance training that they give here at IV&V, and we're just applying it to those entities that we have in AMF. If you look at this, the other project artifacts, the target artifacts, they're all artifacts and would show up in the artifact property or the artifact palette. The technical reference, analysis, the evidence, that's all assessment work, because it's work that we're doing. And what we did is, if you heard our earlier discussion about the different types of traces we have, the blue traces and outside sources are also artifacts. The blue arrows here identify this is a trace between an artifact and work that we're doing. And the green ones show this is a trace between 2 different pieces of work that we've done. So it's between, maybe a claim and an argument, or a claim and an issue, or a risk and a CDR report that we have in there. So any of that stuff can be traced to each other. So that's kind of a high-level evidence-based assurance 101. And I'll let Zach get into his specific example here.
Okay, so I'm going to go over a specific example, actually two examples here of starting with a claim. The type of assessment would just be an assessment type of a claim, and show how we can create an assurance case, for that claim. So start with a claim as an assessment. Make an initial claim by creating an assessment. If you see on the left, it shows a picture of the analysis portion of the palette, and I would just right-click on that assurance claim section, which is a top of a folder, and say create a new assessment, and then in my assessment property view, I can go through and start adding information. This is a simple assessment that is talking about some requirement assurance claim. So here we can add additional assessments and arguments on the claim. So in the picture, which I apologize for the resolution there, the yellow is our top claim, and all the green bubbles are additional assessments that are arguments. And then the blue are evidence being linked to these claims. That evidence can either be additional assessment work, it could be design work, it could be artifacts from the project that support the arguments of the claim, and you just start building your case up by linking all this stuff together. And what's interesting here is, a lot of this stuff, it's not like I have to start from the claim and go from scratch. A lot of this connectivity can already be there just from my analysis work. So when I go to make a claim saying, yeah, this module's requirements are good and we're signing off from them, I already have all my analysis and on all the requirements in that module all linked together. It's just a matter of putting those specific buckets, which is much less laborious than some other methods. So a complete claim can be followed using traces from the top claim assessment. So here's an example of the red bubble is the top claim, and the yellow one here is yellow just means it's highlighted in the tool, and all the colors are customizable options. Is an example of a argument on that claim, and then we have 3 pieces of evidence traced to that argument. And this is to show the benefit of AWB and the fact that, with a goal notation diagram or some kind of other claim diagram, it's pretty easy to start. I can go to that diagram, look at my claim, and trace it down to all its levels. But AWB actually lets you go backwards, because here I basically would right-click on that piece of evidence and shown parents to that, and I get to see all these other arguments that are pointing to that piece of evidence. And you start to get to see the web of how everything fits together. I can go into each of these and start expanding them and see all the evidence on each of those other arguments or claims. And it's kind of a backwards direction of the traditional way that it's done. So in conclusion, AWB is a robust tracing and has robust tracing and graphing capabilities, making an ideal tool for seamless integration of evidence-based assurance in the IV&V program in a dynamic, useful, and implement fashion. Its advantage over other methods is the ability to create assurance cases and record evidence dynamically throughout the life of the project without requiring extensive additional effort from analysts to create separate diagrams and documents to organize and illustrate their evidence. And what I mean by that is kind of the saying is, when you go to make your claims and go to start building your case, all of your evidence is already in your tool already, and you're just pointing to the work. Any questions? Oh, she has a list.
Somebody just pulled out a book.
Okay. You talk about it, maybe. Okay, go ahead. This is more of an AMF, general AMF.
Yeah, it still sees
Okay.
you. Yeah, it latches on all of let go of. We were talking about the AMF introduction AMF session earlier, and there's 3 tiers to that. There's a user interface tier, and the AWB is definitely a user interface tier. There is a business tier, which we use to plug everything in. And then there's the data tier, where we go to different pieces of data. The business tier is the plug, where we plug in the different pieces of data. Right now, we have business objects interacting with Word documents, Excel spreadsheets, doors, hardware JPL, VMS database, and SQL Server. And and Orbit, we're just starting to come up with Orbit right now. We can add other sources as they go. The Word and the Excel interfaces are built on the idea that am I doing something? Are built on the idea that we're going to get these in many different formats and organization schemas. So it actually allows us to define that as part of the data layer for those particular implementations. That's kind of a long answer to how difficult is it to get data in here. There's two answers there. One, you don't have to put data in. You can still use it from its source. But the way that we do it on the SMAP project is we do use a centralized repository that we're pulling everything into. And what happens is you take the data object plug from the source for Excel or DMS or DOORS, and we say extract all the objects, and we say load all the objects into the SQL. And it's really that easy for us to do. And the whole idea of having this universal language is that as more and more technologies come into the mix, it should be less and less painful. I think in an earlier example we talked about when we first started with the Word documents, we had some issues, but once we'd gotten around to some of the Excel spreadsheets and got more generic with the business objects, going back to work was a lot simpler for us as we got more changes in Word documents. Does that kind of answer your question? Oh, we're real good. I mean, traceability maybe. No, we actually have accelerators in Excel, and we'll be talking about that tomorrow afternoon. But we have built a special set of utilities for Excel at the data layer, whereby the data objects in Excel will dynamically react to the data in the spreadsheet. All you have to do is add two spreadsheets that say this is where everything is in my spreadsheet, and it'll all of a sudden plug into the AMF framework and be usable. It's available. I mean, we'll come. If you want to set up a meeting, later this month or next week, we'll come look at your data and tell you what it would take to do it.
You want to move to the other room? Okay.
If you don't mind. There's some other questions in the breakout session also, so I'm sorry. We need to stay on time.